So, uh, hello everyone. It's gonna snow later on today, and so I prepared. I stocked up food and prepared myself to be in for the night or the day. And I decided to dive into the microbiome for a good while, a couple of hours. It's about 4:30 in the morning now, and I started technically yesterday. And I reached the point where I started reading about how sleep and stress um, affect the microbiome. I was very curious about that. Um, you know, I was under the notion that microbiome is directly related to what we eat, how that can actually affect that. So I figured, considering a little bit of the irony there, I should just make a video. I know that usually when you study a lot of information the night before you go to sleep, it's actually a good thing, but you'll remember the information a lot better by the time you wake up. So this is actually probably should have did the videos after I wake up, but um, this video in particular is going to be on how sleep and stress affect the microbiome. And it affects the microbiomes in a lot of different ways. The signaling, the barrier integrity, hormones, mitochondria, inflammation, which microbes dominate the microbiome composition. Um, it affects a lot, and here's why. When we experience a lot of stress, or we lack sleep, um, there's this effect called the HPA axis, and the hypothalamus sends signals to the pituitary, which sends signals to the adrenal glands, which trigger cortisol release. It's the endocrine system. And staying up late stresses the body. Any kind of stress is going to um, hit the sympathetic nervous system, affecting adrenaline and neuroadrenaline. And this is for dealing for short-term stress for adaptability, and chronic stress, um, which is deregulating, all of which puts us into a state of mind of survival mode. So, staying up late or being really stressed out is a form of survival mode. And what we find is that the stress triggers adrenal release, which is interesting to me that there's a couple of things, which I'll get back to actually to this in a moment. Because the cortisol release is also very acidic, and it's going to affect pH levels over time if it's constant. And there's a few other things that correlate to this, but lower parasympathetic activity means reduced stomach acid, reduced enzyme secretion, altered motility, and poor digestion. It increases gut permeability. Cortisol and inflammatory cytokines can alter tight junction proteins and thin the mucus layer. So there's particular microbes that you need in your body to produce butyrate, that the short chain fatty acid for butyrate that keeps the mucus lining within our gut and our intestines and everything in production. Because what is it, our stomach hydrochloric acid, is our stomach acid, is constantly eating away at our stomach lining. So we have to constantly be producing it faster than the acid is eating away at it at that. So we need a lot of um, butyrate, short chain fatty acid of butyrate production. And if we're stressed out and it changes the terrain in which the microbes that produce that are reduced and the production of the mucus layer happens, one effect is that we can start producing ulcers. So, yeah, stress is a direct, indirect, um, can lead to the development of that from the microbial perspective, um, due to lack of butyrate production. That's where we get the effect of the barrier. Um, alters microbial composition. Chronic stress can reduce microbial diversity. Again, um, this is going to offset the short chain fatty acid production, where they have stabilizers, short chain fatty acid stabilizers or fiber stabilizers. There's a couple different terms for them, but essentially, you have microbials that produce, like, say, acetate, short chain fatty acid acetate, and other microbials are going to eat the acetate to produce the butyrate or the propionate. Um, and so, because they feed off of each other's production, just like mammals take in oxygen from trees, and trees taking the carbon dioxide from mammals, their exchange is stabilizing the environment to a certain degree from the external connection, and not just to say the internal. So, that's just a parallel function from the microbial to the environmental. The cortisol increases glucose availability. Um, so, right. So, if we're up at night, there's particularly a reason that we're going to need more energy output, or if we're in an environment that's stressful, usually we're dealing with something, um, like if a lion chases a gazelle, the gazelle's going to be kind of stressed, and cortisol is going to release, and it's going to need energy for the ATP burst, right? So the gazelle is going to need the fastest source of energy, which is sugar. Cortisol is going to release sugar. That's so. Um, so one, if we're stressed out, it makes it harder for us to sleep because we're getting an energy output, and that energy output is sugar. So what is that going to affect? Um, Insulin resistance is going to eventually create diabetes. Um, Not to also say that flight or fight response from being in survival mode, um, that becomes like a mindset, and the body is now being put into a mindset. Um, It makes me also think about like when we stay up at night and we eat sugar. It's kind of like helps the process because the stress is on the kidneys, the adrenals. Well, the adrenals are on the kidneys. And which is interesting too in Chinese medicine, right, is the kidneys store Jing energy, which is like life force energy. And, or at least this is what they consider in Eastern Chinese medicine, is like you have your ancestral Jing, which is like the DNA and the ancestral memory like passed down through your bloodline, has a particular Jing. And then it's like the Jing also from the food that we eat, which I think in this case is the biota, a microbiome. And then there's a third one, which might be like spirit itself or essence itself. I gotta double check the third one. So always the third one that I gotta double check. But I find that interesting because stress um, tasks on our life force energy, and which is found in the kidneys, which in this case is being affected by the adrenals, by the production of cortisol that leads into glucose production. And so there's a few other things that come from all of that. Um, because the whole microbiome is going to be affected by that over if it's often, once if it happens once, it's not going to change your terrain, your ecosystem. But if it's on a regular basis, your body's going to start to adapt to that consistency and reinforce itself. Which is why I also think like when we think about partying at night versus partying during the day, there's this stress that's being put on the body from being up at night, and the the drinks usually have a lot of sugar, so you're already resolving the stress. The stress needs to produce, but you're already intaking this production, and which is usually from the state of survival mode. And alcohol kind of has like this uh, natural effect on survival mode. So, like, if people are on survival mode all the time, the remedy would be to kind of, I guess, alcohol would kind of remedy the stress from being in survival mode. But at the same time, it reinforces that mindset, right? Because uh, it becomes a lifestyle, and the body will start to adapt to that, and it's chronic on the body. And there's quite a few other reasons we could get into here. Is like increases oxidative stress, which is also reduce, right? So if we're putting out glucose, that increases the ATP production, and if that is on an often basis, it can wear on the body too. Everything that we use often, can wear, and it needs time to rest and heal. So we lose the effectiveness of our energy production, and so we get increased fatigue, adrenal depletion, uh, regulatory overload. Now, uh, repairs gut barrier, right? This is what sleep does. Sleep helps repair the gut barrier. It releases growth hormones, repairs pathways, or activates pathway repairs. So sleep is very important because it takes us into a healing state for our entire body. While if we're up past like 9 o'clock, there starts to be a steady increase of stress on the body, and especially after 12. Ideally, we want to stop eating food by 7 o'clock, be asleep by 9, and then maybe not eat anything until at least 7 or 8 in the morning, 12 hours later, because we want to keep the digestive tract as light and empty as possible when we go to sleep. And I know again in a reference of the Chinese medicine, like there's this was a like there are different times of the day that the energies are peak or at its weakest. Um, like the heart's strongest point is in the 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and its weakest is at 2 in the morning, which supposedly I haven't the research or statistic is like most heart attacks are at 2 in the morning. So which I guess would be interesting to see, like how like stress throughout the night happens. And okay, so not to digress too much, um, irregular sleep reduces microbial diversity, and so the short chain fatty acid production is not going to be set right, and that means a lot of the systems in the body are going to be offset. It disrupts metabolic regulation, lowers inflammatory tone. Deep sleep reduces IL-6, TNF alpha, and stress hormones. Without sleep, inflammation starts to accumulate. So when you're up late, anything with itis, your joints might start to hurt more and be achy. Anything that is itis based is going to be felt throughout the body, and you're going to feel it more in the areas that are more, that have stuff, are being affected most. And again, butyrate helps with reducing all of that. I'm not a doctor. I'm making all this up as I go. See a doctor if this is something you really want to address more. I'm exploring this information and learning this as I go. Stabilize glucose regulation, reduce insulin sensitivity, alters appetite hormones, and increases cravings. So it makes us hungrier. When we don't sleep or get enough rest, we actually become. There's a big domino effect that comes from all of this. Um, Supports memory and brain detox. So when we go to sleep, it helps clear out the brain, get out any metabolic waste. It helps clear up cognitive fog, brain fog, gut inflammation. So there's a feedback loop that ends up happening from the reduced butyrate, the offset in the microbiome, the balance in the terrain, the effects on the organs, and the higher production of glucose. Um, Not getting proper sleep really can affect the body. Increase inflammation. What's also interesting, right, is that it increases gut-brain reactivity. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of like stimulates brain function, which I guess makes sense for people during the night. One, because cortisol levels are supposed to drop, and other, was it serotonin? I don't know what other chemical is supposed to go up as the cortisol levels drop, but that makes us more creative and makes us think more outside the box. And as I'm researching this for the past 5 hours or 6 hours, um, so so when we eat sugar and such, it helps. There's a certain sense of fun to do things throughout the night, um, at the expense of our body, which is actually not good. That's not a good thing to. Um, we don't want to stimulate the brain and favor our ideas over the expense and cost of our physical body. That's not a no. That's not right. That's not okay. We, you know, it's for a lot of reasons. It's not a good practice. So, what actually improves um, the situation? You want to have three consistent meals, like at the same time throughout your day. Again, not eating anything heavy at night, keeping the digestive tract as empty as you sleep as possible. Um, Fasting for about 12 hours. So again, if we don't eat at 7 at night and we continue to 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning, have a meal around then. Daily movement, clearing up any stagnation in the body, being active. Um, that's all going to keep the systems functioning. Not just walking, like warm up every muscle in your body. Maybe I'll get into a different thing about that. Um, okay. And sleep before midnight. That's another one. Light exposure in the morning. That's another really important one. And I think that's important because when we go outside or we connect to the sun, we're syncing up with the day, we're syncing up with the environment. And our cortisol levels are going to rise. It's gonna set a whole set of alignment to the day's progression, and that's going to line up with the foods we eat. And there's this whole harmony that's going to come in from that. Breath work before meals, keeping the body calm, and so whatever we can do to help reduce stress on the body and take care of our um, kidneys and avoiding sugar. It's getting out of survival mode. Hmm. Yeah. If it's really that fundamental, that puts a lot of things in perspective, but that's a whole other topic. Um, so the big insight here is that we cannot eat our way out of chronic stress, and we cannot fiber or feed our microbiome out of poor sleep. We need to manage our stress, and we need to sleep well. Regulation precedes ecology, and ecology reinforces regulation. That's pretty much everything I have to say about this, the lack of sleep and stress on the body. There's a lot more information I want to get into, like what exactly are microbes, what do they do, how do they signal to one another in the body, and what are they producing, and what do they produce affect, which I'll get into probably the next video. I don't know if I'm going to do that tonight. Maybe I'll go to sleep and do that tomorrow or after I wake up. Um, the effects of short chain fatty acids. I'll make probably another video on that. And then the signaling itself. Right, I said that already. And also maybe, how can we tell if our microbes are off? What signs and symptoms can we tell is happening in our body, and what state that we're in? I'll probably get into that as well. Uh, okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining me again with this. And I know when I look back on this video, I will laugh. So I know I'm going to enjoy it. And I hope you do as well. And maybe till next time. Thank you.